Hello and welcome to Connected episode 252. It's made possible by our sponsors, ExpressVPN, Hover, and Moo. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I am joined by Mr. Federico Viticci.
Hello, Stephen Hackett. How are you?
I'm good, Federico Viticci.
Good to know.
Yeah, I think everyone's good.
I'm all right.
We are joined by somebody else. He is extremely under the weather.
It used to be Myke Hurley.
Yeah, it's a husking shell of Myke Hurley. And we have limited Myke to single word answers. So, Myke, how are you?
Fine.
Good to hear it. We are going to start the show with follow-up because that's what we do at the beginning of the show.
Good.
You weren't asked a question. You will speak when spoken to, sir.
You should just say, okay.
Okay.
I want to start with the MacBook Air. It was revised. We spoke about it last week. And there were kind of rumors at the time that maybe one way to get the price down is that Apple shipped it with a slower SSD. And it seems like that could be true. So there's an article over on Mac Rumors where someone compared the 128 gig version of the 2018 and 2019. Write speeds are the same or even faster, but read speeds seem to be up to like 35% slower. And it's just tested on the base 128 gig storage. I don't think we have numbers for the higher capacities. This doesn't really bother me. I mean, these SSDs are really fast. The T2 makes them even faster. Like, I'm not particularly worried about this. I don't think that you would notice this in practice. Like, it's not a big deal. Especially if you're coming from like an older MacBook Air, like the old style. Everything else about this new machine is so much faster than, you're not gonna miss that percentage. So.
It doesn't sound like a big deal to me, but then again, I don't have a strong opinion about these things. So
it's true.
Myke, do you have an opinion about these things?
Acceptable.
Okay, good. Moving on, Stephen.
Moving on. We also spoke about Zoom, the voice over IP teleconference, phone calls on the internet software, and how they had some pretty nasty security bugs, including running a web server on your Mac. That's fine.
Is it a bug if it's been done on purpose? Like,
no, it's just a bad choice. Really bad choice. It turns out that Zoom software was white labeled to other providers like this. So there are other companies like RingCentral and a couple in China that basically just bought Zoom software, and they sort of run the service themselves as a competitor, but I guess Zoom is still getting money from them because they bought their software. Of course, that feature / bad decision followed that software to all these other places, and it now is being patched as well. And it's sort of the same situation as before. These companies like RingCentral are patching their software, but if you uninstalled their software, there's no way to do it because the web server is still running. So Apple is using their mechanism to kill the web server components of these other applications. There's a link over on Daring Fireball that talks about how that works in detail, how that is on by default. It requires no user action. Like, you'd have to go into System Preferences, Software Update Advanced to go in and turn this off. And I don't think anyone should do that. I think everyone should leave it on because I really believe that Apple only uses this in the most extreme circumstances, right? This is not something, I would imagine that the process within Apple to pull this trigger is complex because they need to make sure that they're not abusing this power. And I think I agree with Gruber that they seem to have the system done appropriately. Myke, do you think that Apple is handling these sorts of things appropriately?
Complicated.
Just a one-word answer that leads to other questions, but we'll never know.
I feel like this is exactly the kind of thing that I don't want to think about. Like, staying up to date on all the security fixes that I'm supposed to do myself. Like, in this case, you're supposed to like stop the server over the terminal and delete the files and make sure it never starts up again. This is exactly the kind of thing I never want to worry about. So I absolutely think this is the right approach. of like issue this kind of silent update for extremely bad security bugs and leave everything else for the standard security system software update. And it feels like, of all companies that may abuse this feature, it feels like Apple is the one that I should be the least concerned about.
And it's interesting, too, because Apple always, as far as we know, I guess, they've always disclosed when they use this. Right? Like maybe we would never know, right, if they have used it and not told us. But I get the feeling that when Apple feels like they need to go down this road, then they let people know, which is good.
I kind of want to believe that there's like a secret, like like what's it called? Like the president of the United States has the football, right?
The nuclear codes.
I kind of want to believe that there's a similar thing for these kind of silent security updates. There's like a secret room where you need to be escorted into as an engineer with your computer, and then you write the code, and then there's a huge button, and Tim Cook looking over your shoulder, and he says something, very dramatic. I can think of a good phrase right now, but something like push it off, or I mean, it's not very dramatic, that one. Still, I kind of, on a more serious note, I'm really fascinated by the idea of like engineers working with top security clearance at Apple. Like I love to be, inside that process and just see what it looks like. You have these engineers handling source code for software that runs on millions of computers, like when the whole FBI thing went down a couple of years ago. Like that stuff is super fascinating to me. Security and engineers and top level access to this stuff. There should be a TV show about this someday. Maybe it should be on Apple TV Plus.
I have a sidebar about system preferences. I know, Federico, you're going to be super into this. So
sure.
Software Update used to be a standalone app, and they rolled it into system. Then it was in the App Store, which was dumb. I don't want to open the App Store to update my OS.
Oh yeah, that used to be a thing.
Yeah, weird, right? Like for years. I mean, like several releases.
Yeah.
And then in Mojave, they put it back into system preferences where it belongs. But here's my issue. Why does Software Update, which lives inside of system preferences, use the system preferences icon as its own icon? It's like those cogged gears from iOS. It's like that all the way down. And so I have a proposal that Apple bring back the old Software Update icon. There is a link in the show notes, so you can go see this icon over in my screenshot library.
Is it a globe?
Yes. So it is a sphere with crisscrossing lines. Actually, if you kind of squint, it doesn't look that unlike the Connected logo, honestly.
Oh, maybe. So that's where it comes from.
And it has arrows going around it to indicate movement, not unlike the Relay logo.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I know.
Guys, I feel like you need to have a talk with your graphic designer.
We have a problem. And here's the thing. The old logo still exists in macOS. So again, there's some screenshots. The Xcode command line tools installer is in your system library right now, and it uses this old icon. So there's a screenshot of that. But then, because I was deep in the weeds at this point, then I remembered the Java Web Start icon. So Federico, I want you to look at this if you haven't already. Open that up in your browser. It is if you could describe this, please, for the audience.
Exhibit B, we are looking at a cup of unspecified brown beverage. Cup appears to have a handle reminiscent of a teacup, in that the handle is very big, and there are surrounding arrows that encircle the cup in a clockwise direction. The arrows are gray and have a gradient. And inside the cup, again, there's some kind of beverage. It appears to be an American take on coffee, or a very transparent hot chocolate. So I am not sure what I'm looking at. What is it because Java is like a beverage in English?
Yeah, Java is related to coffee somehow. I don't know.
Okay.
So if you are looking at this and you zoom in on it, this is an extremely old school. This has been part of macOS 10 forever. It's so skeuomorphic that if you zoom in, there's like a little half dozen little air bubbles on the side of the inside of the cup where the liquid meets the inside surface. I love that detail. Why can't icons be good again? Make icons great again is what we're saying. I think is what we're saying.
Oh no.
So Apple, if you want to replace the system preferences gears for the software update, bring the old software update icon back. And look, we'll even let you use the artwork because it's clearly so accidentally close to ours.
Let's play a game, Steven. You sent us a screenshot of this Finder directory. It's located into System Library Core Services. I am going to go through 5 of these well-hidden Mac utilities.
Okay.
And in 2 seconds, or 3 seconds, just a very quick sentence, you need to tell me what it does, each app.
Oh boy. Okay. Can
ready?
I be looking at this folder as well? Or do I need to have it closed?
Okay, ready? Okay, image events.
I don't know.
Help viewer.
That shows the help files within applications.
Memory slot utility.
That is for the Mac Pro to manage the PCI slots.
NetAuth agent.
That, I believe, is used to log into remote, like if you're using remote home folders, but I'm not sure.
Keychain circle notification.
It tells you about your keychain. Can you pick the dock? I know what that one does.
Last one. Jar launcher.
That launches Java applets.
Are you serious?
I think so.
You have an answer?
.jar is like Java applets,
okay.
right?
Well done.
Jar files.
Sure.
Jar files, yeah. It's Java stuff.
I knew that. Mm-hmm. I knew that. It was a test.
Yeah, there's some amazing thing. This is a kind of like a catch-all folder. Like there's the app that you use when you add a printer. That's in here. You know, the dock is in here. Like if you want to know where the dock lives, it's in core services. All sorts of fun stuff. Spotlight's in here. Good stuff. So that's a place that we went today. I've been told by sources who typed it in the Google document that Myke wishes that Macs could install updates on shutdown like Windows does because no one wants to restart their machines. Do you think that would mean security updates would be installed less often?
More.
Okay. We got that covered.
This is like we have like an oracle, and the oracle has spoken single word answers. It's like, hey, Mr. Oracle, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Good. So yeah, Jason Snell's in big trouble here. If Apple brings back the 6-color Apple logo and calls it the 6 colors edition, it's gonna be
awkward. Yeah.
I hope not. I hope they call it like in classic Apple, sort of vintage Apple or classic Apple, not 6-color, because that could be confusing.
Yeah, this is a weird rumor. So Mac Rumors has this, and I love this. In the article, they say this could very well be untrue, which, like, is that how they report rumors?
I like that there's a risk component involved with this rumor. It's like we're playing roulette here.
Except there's no real consequences, right? Like, is the logo on the new laptop 6 colors? I don't know. Like, the very low stake. I think it is exciting. So the rumor says that Apple could reintroduce its classic rainbow logo to some of its new products as early as this year. And they have mock-ups, of course, of the iPhone XR, but next year's iPhone XR, so not without the... no, this is this year's. It's got the blue one in there. So rainbow logos on that, and then what is a shockingly shiny MacBook Pro with no bezels, and the back seems to be like a mirrored stainless steel. Apple, please do not ship this laptop with a stainless steel lid. But if they put that aside, a glowing rainbow Apple logo on the back. I think these look awesome. I for a long time, Jason did this on his old MacBook Air. There was like vinyl stickers that you could cut out and put over your Apple logo on your laptop. So it was the 6-color logo. I love this, and I think Apple should do it. And you know what? I think it's a good idea.
I would honestly consider one because it looks fun and vintage, and I like that. Even though I actually never lived through the 6-color Apple era, I like to pretend I did, or that I knew about it at least. So I would actually consider one. And it could be a fun way to sort of spice up the lineup a little more instead of the classic, red and blue and white that we have now. They could go beyond that and do something a little more extra, something a little nicer. So this could be fun. I like it.
Do you think this would be like a special edition, or this would just be like how all the iPhones come?
I think it could be a special edition. I'm struggling to find the kind of a special occasion for that special edition. Maybe there doesn't need to be one. This is the same company that celebrated the App Store's 10th anniversary on its 11th year with the poker game.
That's still every time I think about that, I die a little inside. Come on, Apple.
I mean, so they might as well celebrate the iPhone's 10th anniversary the next year. So
they're a couple years off now. Myke, is this something that you would buy?
Yes.
Good to know.
Good. Very good.
Before we move on, we are recording this on July 17th. August is quickly approaching, and August, as you may know, is Relay's anniversary month. The network will turn 5 years old this August, which is hard to believe. And we're doing several things to mark the occasion. One, about, we're doing a live show in San Francisco. We would love if you would come out. We still have some tickets for sale. We are going to have a wide range of Relay hosts doing a whole bunch of different things. So this is not like a live connected. We've done that for this year, and we've put that back in the box for probably a long time because Federico can't get any more tattoos. He's almost out of body space. So those are now...
You would like to think so.
Yeah, sweet neck tattoo. But it's going to be like a hodgepodge of Relay content and hosts. We're looking forward to that. So there's a link in the show notes. August also is... sort of our membership drive. We're going to be talking about this more in the coming weeks, but every show does a special members only episode. So we're hard at work on planning those. And there's a lot of fun stuff coming. So you can learn more about that at relay.fm/membership. And there's probably some more stuff coming that I can't talk about, but it's going to be awesome. So those links are all in the show notes. We're going to move on to we basically have a collection of tiny topics this week. It's kind of a weird week. We just got a sort of a grab bag of stuff. But first, I would like to tell you about our first sponsor, and that is ExpressVPN. You might think that nobody would want your online data or to snoop on what you're doing, but if you are browsing the web without anything to protect your privacy, you risk that very thing happening. Ad trackers, people with bad intents, they're all out there. They all can collect our data. But it doesn't have to happen, which is why I use and recommend ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN runs in the background of your computer, your phone, your iPad. It encrypts your data and hides your public IP address. You just download the app and you click to connect and you're ready to go. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 VPN service by TechRadar, and it uses new cutting-edge technology called Trusted Server to make sure there's no logs of what you're doing online. It costs less than $7 a month and comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. I'm getting ready to be out of town on a bunch of trips, and you better believe it that I'll be using ExpressVPN in airports, hotels, Airbnbs. I can't trust that public Wi-Fi stuff. I want to make sure that I have peace of mind. Protect your online activity today. To find out how you can get 3 months free, head over to expressvpn.com/connected. That's expressvpn.com/connected for 3 months free with a 1-year package. You can take back your online privacy with ExpressVPN. Our thanks to ExpressVPN for their support of Connected and all of Relay FM. Tiny topic number 1, and this is, I would say inspired, but basically I just ripped it off from another podcast. Do By Friday recently on episode 140 had a conversation about how they name their devices. And I realized in the 26 years of doing the show together, I'm not sure we've ever talked about this. And so Federico, let's start with you. How do you name your devices?
Well, I try to brand my devices with my name as much as possible because I don't have an ego problem. Therefore, my phone is called either Tichy Max or Max Tichy. Lately, I've been playing around with Max Tichy more, and of course, it's camel cased, so no space between them. Sort of like you would write Max stories, for example. So Max Tichy is the name of my phone. My AirPods are the Tichy Pods. So of course, they go well together. Take a different approach with the iPad for some reason. Because I have two. I have the 12.9 and the 11-inch Pro. I call them Big Pro and Small Pro. And again, camel case, no space. And the Mac Mini is just called Mini, so that when I'm on my home network, I can just type in mini.local and it can, SMB or SSH connects to my Mac Mini like that, because it's just called Mini. I don't have a strong preference for the Apple Watch. I think in previous years, I used to rename Federico's Apple Watch, which is the default name, to like Series 3 or Series 4. But I haven't done it since my last restore of WatchOS, so I should pay attention to that again. Again, I'm not too happy with my Big Pro, Small Pro naming scheme. I prefer the iPhone one and the AirPods one. It's very fun. Oh, and the Apple TV is called Big TV. Because it's connected to a big television set, like 55 inches. So it's a big TV. And that's how I name things.
I feel like your iPad names are probably the weakest part of that system. Maybe you could do like Big Teachy, Small Teachy? Or, I don't know.
But that would imply a big me and a small me.
But you have Max Teachy.
So I don't know.
You don't Maximum Federico.
Yeah, and that's good. You don't want minimum Teachy.
Maybe.
Right? So
mine is
I don't know.
really simple and pretty boring. I basically just stick my Twitter handle ISMH in front of it. So like my MacBook Pro is ISMH 15. It's 15-inch. My iMac Pro is ISMH Pro. iPad is ISMH 11. My iPhone is ISMH 10s. Very boring. I've done that for years. I used to, if I broke a phone, then I would name its replacement. I would increase the number, so like ISMH 7 plus 2, but that got out of hand. And then every time I saw my phone's name, I was reminded of my occasional drop damage. So I got rid of that system because it made me sad. Myke, in a single word, do you have a naming scheme for your devices?
No.
Do you wish you had one?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. Federico, tell me what is happening with AirMail.
It's happening that AirMail released a new app on the App Store, and I should clarify that AirMail 0, which is the new app, is the sponsor of my website this week, and it's a new client that works exclusively with Gmail. I haven't really paid much attention to this. First of all, because I don't handle my sponsorships, and second, because I'm busy writing my iOS review. My understanding is that in doing this and in updating, they have released a new app, but they've also updated the business model for the standard AirMail app experience. And in doing this, they have rethought some of the decisions around charging for features. And so what they're doing now is push notifications that used to be available as part of the standard AirMail purchase for the, until last week, basically. They now require an annual or monthly subscription. So it used to be a free feature. Now it's part of a subscription. And there has been a lot of outrage and a lot of pushback from users and a lot of blog posts all over the web about this. Outcry from users about previously free feature becoming a subscription, and I think that this whole controversy, it sort of taps into the all of the this underlying feelings that people have about subscriptions, and it sort of I think it encapsulates what people dislike about subscriptions. And again, I feel bad for these guys. First of all, because I know them personally. They are Italian. They are a small team. They won an Apple Design Awards a couple of years ago, and I met up with them at WWDC. They are, as far as I know, super nice people. And again, I don't say this because they're sponsoring my website. I happen to know them personally. They're fun, and they obviously care about AirMail, which I personally used as my client for a long time before switching to Spark. But I feel like this is just a bad decision, and it was communicated poorly. If you're planning to switch the business model for a feature that people are already using in their apps, you need to tell them months in advance. You need to have a plan. You need to have a blog post. You need to outline a strategy. You need to explain why. You can't just release an update on the App Store and people, when they next open the app, they will be presented with a splash screen that says, oh, and now notifications require a subscription. Because that is just a bad business practice. And it wasn't even communicated poorly. It was not communicated at all, which makes it even worse. And second, there's an argument to be made for the fact that this is against App Store guidelines. You're in theory, if you were to follow the law exactly, you're not supposed to take a feature that used to be part of a paid upfront app and lock it behind a subscription suddenly without any previous warning. Then again, do all developers follow? Does even Apple follow their own guidelines by the letter? Not necessarily. So there's a second argument. I think the main argument here is the idea of indie developers are struggling, and we're talking about $5, but it's not just the monetary amount of the subscription. I think it's the practice, and it's the leaving people with a bad feeling. Because I feel like, and this may sound ridiculous, but if these developers warned people 6 months ago or last year, and they said, look, very clearly, we are a small team, running push notifications costs us money. We need to start charging for this feature. And here's what we're going to do. And here's how we're going to handle the transition. People, and I'm very confident that people would have even paid $10 or $15, even more than what they are charging now. But you catch them by surprise. You don't communicate at all. You just bring up a pop-up that says, surprise, now you got to give us money. And you just leave people with a bad feeling, and they get angry and they are frustrated and they get upset. And now it's a whole mess. This is my interpretation of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I understand their position of you need your app to make money so you can keep building it. And they've tinkered with it over the years and the business model. But so I don't envy that problem, but I think to your point, there are better ways you could handle this. And I think all of their errors come down to just the communication with their users. You can't surprise people with this sort of thing. If you need to take something that was part of the app and section it off into a subscription, I would think, are there other things you could do, if you need to pay for the notification server, just for instance? Maybe you can leave notifications in the app, but have new features that are behind some new subscription. But it feels like taking something that was there and removing it and putting it behind a subscription. That I think that's why people are upset, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, and look, I don't, at Mac Stories, we deal with a lot of indie developers. So we are very aware of the struggles of the independent developer or the indie development studio made of 2-3 people in 2019. But we also need to face reality in that if you want to survive in the App Store these days, you may be an indie, but you need to behave like a serious big studio. Being indie does not excuse you from just charging money without explaining anything. And this is something that I learned as the owner of an indie website years ago, that just, slapping this term, being indie, does not excuse you from following basic business practices that customers appreciate and customers demand. And I feel like in this case, this is a good example of indie developers thinking, the App Store is unsustainable. We need to start asking for money and everybody will understand. And I can sort of see how and why this might have passed as an acceptable strategy years ago, maybe 5 years ago. These days where many more apps are based on subscriptions, and it feels like every other day there's a new subscription service or an existing product or app is switching to subscriptions. Even though you're indie, does not mean you don't need to communicate it beforehand. Does not mean you just can't go without outlining your plans. And so, the situation has clearly changed. 5 or 6 years ago, I remember, because I used to do this, we would have criticized all those people that were upset about the developer asking for more money. But now, when a developer switches to a subscription, which is the popular business model these days, it's just common to complain about it. Because we are, I think everybody has a bit of a subscription fatigue going on. That's also a factor. So, and there are a lot of arguments to be made about whether it's Apple's fault in that Apple is not enabling a more traditional, paid upgrade business model. That's a separate discussion. But in this case, I feel like, with all due respect to the Airmail folks, because it's a really good app. It's a bit buggy, but it's always been buggy. We've always said that. But it's still got that kind of functionality that you cannot get anywhere else. But in this case, they should have taken the time to explain what they were doing beforehand. And they not only, I think they would have avoided all of this, I think they would have been able to ask for even more money if they were. And it's not a matter of being honest. It's just a matter of being proactive and thinking about it beforehand. That's at least my take.
Yeah, the idea of having some sort of trust with your users, that is the heart of the App Store is weird, right? There are a bunch of users who download an app and they don't understand that there's a person or a company behind them, right? A lot of people think these apps come from Apple or whatever, especially these if you're not Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, it's like, oh, I don't know who makes Airmail. Probably just like some people somewhere. And I think a lot of users just assume that developers make good livings, and a lot of them do, but a lot of them really struggle as well. And I don't know where Airmail is on that spectrum. But when you are indie and you've crafted this persona for yourself in sort of the ecosystem of users who care about indie development, like people who read your website or listen to this show, and you do something to damage that trust, that's really hard to come back from. And I don't think it helps Airmail that they're in a situation where they've built an app that is in a category that is full of failure, right? How many good mail clients have come and gone over the years, because it's a really hard business to be in. And part of me looks at this and thinks, Airmail's done. I don't know that. I hope that's not true. I really don't wish that on them. But if you're making changes to try to shore up the business and you do it in a way that burns a lot of user trust, that's a bad combo. And I hope they pull through this. I really do. But I just worry about it. So best of luck to those guys. But I think that hopefully they've learned their lesson about communicating clearly with their users, because that's a pretty bad error in my book. Myke, do you think that email apps are good on iOS, or do you think they are bad on iOS?
Bad.
We have some more tiny topics, but I'm going to tell you about our second sponsor. That's our friends over at Hover. If you've been thinking about building an online identity, you can get started with one simple step: buying a domain name. And with Hover, it's easy to find the domain that shows the world who you are and what you're passionate about. I've used Hover for years, well before they sponsored any of our shows. And a domain that I've had there a really long time, of course, is 512pixels.net. And that name comes from the size of the screen on those original compact Macs, the original Macintosh on that line. And it helps set everything about the Mac, moving forward. It's where 72 DPI, it comes from that original screen. So when I branded the site, I knew that I wanted to pay respect to a nerdy aspect of Macintosh computing. And Hover made it really easy to find that domain, to find domains related to it, and they've been there ever since. Hover respects their customers. There's no upsells. It's a really clean user interface when you go through the checkout process. They're not trying to throw things in your cart at the last minute you don't need. It's a very simple process to go through. And if you have any questions, they have amazing customer support. You can get in touch with them. They can answer questions about DNS, about registration, all sorts of things. They actually helped me out of jams in the past with DNS in particular. They know what they're talking about. You're not going to get handed off to somebody else. Hover has over 400 domain name extensions to choose from. You can get all the normal ones, .com, .net, but you get weird ones too, .coffee, .ceo, .photography. You can spice things up and really make your site domain name stand out. So no matter what you want to showcase to the world, you can do it with Hover. If you're new to Hover, you can get 10% off any domain extension for the first year. Head on over to hover.com/connected. Make that first step towards building your online identity today. The URL one more time is hover.com/connected for 10% off any domain extension for your first year. Our thanks to Hover for their support of this show and Relay FM. Okay, this is going to be tricky because Tiny Topic 3 and 4 are basically about Myke. And Myke is in full Oracle mode. So, Myke, I know you bought a new Echo Show, which for listeners is the Echo with the screen built into it, so you can interact with your voice, but it can also show you stuff like a time, music playing, recipes. Occasionally, it can play YouTube videos, depending on how Amazon and Google feel about each other. It's a pretty neat device, and the first one was I thought really ugly, but I think they've come a long way in their industrial design. But Myke, you had an Echo as well, I think in your kitchen, and so have you replaced your Echo with an Echo Show?
Yes.
Is that because the Echo wasn't doing something you wanted?
Old.
It was old. Okay. And you can't stand old technology. I know you get the heebie-jeebies coming in my office. So, did it have some sort of problem?
No.
Okay. And the Echo Show resolves that, I guess.
Yes.
You also have
Hearing.
You had a hearing problem? Okay. This is going to be very exciting to edit.
Yes.
Do you have a HomePod as well? Are you using the HomePod more or less than the Echo devices?
More.
Okay. Have the Echo devices stood their ground because they do things the HomePod cannot do?
Yes.
Is an example of that showing recipes?
Yes.
This is difficult. I'm just like working through the bullet list. You also, I believe, had a kitchen iPad. Does the Echo Show replace that as well?
Yes.
Interesting. So you are showing recipes, viewing timers.
Groceries.
Doing your grocery. Oh, yeah, because you use a grocery service that ties in with the Echo, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the Echo Show is like a kitchen computer for you, really.
Yes.
Okay. Does it sound good? I know the original Echo Show, I was not impressed hardly with any of the hardware, but it didn't sound very good to me. Of course, the HomePod, I think, sounds really good, but does the Echo Show sound good?
Bassy.
Oh, so it drops the bass.
Yes.
Do you throw parties with the Echo Show?
No.
Why not?
Boring.
Wait, you don't have to answer this, but you're boring or the Echo Show is. We'll just move on from that. Have you found that having the screen improves what you were doing with the Echo before?
Yes.
I also know that the Echo Show does like digital photo frame stuff. Are you utilizing that?
Yes.
It pulls images from what photo service? Like, how do you get pictures on it?
Amazon.
So you're uploading photos to Amazon Photos, I guess, or whatever they call it?
Yes.
Okay. And you've just uploaded a subset of images that you really want to see there.
Yeah.
I don't know this. Is the Echo Show a touchscreen device? Can you touch a screen and it responds?
Yeah.
Are you doing that in the kitchen? Sometimes?
Yes. Yes, sometimes.
Okay. When the HomePod came out, I think we talked about it on the show. It was like, well, is there room for Apple to like slap an iPad mini to the front of a HomePod and call it the HomePod Show? And I think that idea is interesting, but what's so great about voice assistants in my mind is that when you're in the kitchen, your hands are dirty, right? You've got some sort of meat juice on them or you're cutting something up and you don't want to touch something. Federico, you have a lot of HomePods. I think like 6.
Yeah.
Do you have one in?
No, I have 3.
You have 3. Just remind me, do you have one in the kitchen for kitchen-y type stuff?
Yes, but it's way up on the shelf. It's not near the meat juice, Steven.
That's good. I mean, the HomePod's covered in cloth. You would never get that out of there, honestly.
Yeah.
And Federico, you moved from Echo devices to the HomePod just like I did. Do you have anything like in sort of like, again, like talking in the domain of the kitchen that the Echo did better or that you miss having moved to the HomePod?
Sylvia likes to say that the Echo was more accurate in understanding our commands. I don't see that. I think my accent is always problematic to an extent with these assistants. I'm trying to think, is there anything that I miss? I feel like it was fun to play around with the integrations with the Echo. Like you can enable a web service and you have all these skills to play around with. But then again, I enabled more skills than I was actually using. And it's also hard for me to compare because since I got a HomePod, was it last year? I think. By going all in with the Apple ecosystem, multiple HomePods and the watch and using reminders instead of a third-party task manager, I don't see the advantages of having an Echo at this point. I don't use any services that cannot be integrated with Siri, and I use Apple, the Apple TV a lot now. I use Apple Music. Back in the day when I was using Todoist and Spotify and all these third-party services, made sense for me to have an Echo, but it feels like at this point I don't miss it. I guess you could say that I miss something that is fun about the Echo, I think, is the fact that Amazon continuously updates it. And there's like new models, new versions, new features. It feels like more of a product in development, whereas the HomePod feels sort of like a mistake that Apple made and that they've been trying to rectify over time, which is a very different mindset. I guess the Echo has more of a community around it, of all the skills and new models and new versions and, constant updates from Amazon, whereas, we're lucky if we get one software update for the HomePod a year. So it's very different from that point of view, but otherwise I don't miss the Echo.
That's pretty much how I feel about it too. I still have an Echo out here in the office just to keep an eye on it, but I don't really miss the Echoes in the kitchen. Like we have a HomePod in the kitchen and one in the bedroom, and I have one out here, so I have 3 as well. And really the last holdout for me was multiple timer support. And when they added that to the HomePod, that basically solved my last issue with it, especially in the domain of the kitchen. Like you can name your timers, as you can ask it, how much time is left on this timer or that timer, and it keeps up with it all. And I think I may disagree with y'all's assessment at home, but I feel like the HomePod does better or at least better listening than the Echo did. And I know with the kids, the HomePod seems to understand them better than the Echo did. That's hard to prove. I've done no testing, right? But it seems to me like my kids, when they ask the HomePod for something, it gets it right basically all the time. And I feel like the Echo, that wasn't true.
Yes.
Is that true with the kids in your household, Myke?
Yes.
Do you have any kids in your household?
No.
Okay. Just want to clarify that. So it sounds like, okay, so Myke, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most happy, 1 being the most unhappy, where do you rate the Echo Show?
7.
Where would you rank the old Echo that you replaced?
6.
Where do you put the HomePod?
7.
Okay. Wow. That's high praise for the Echo Show, I think. All right. So we got through that one somehow. I'm just going to call an audible and cut the next one. We'll come back to Myke and the iPadOS beta.
Yeah.
Because that was painful. Moving on then, there are some more iPhone, I don't want to say rumors, but it's something. So we talked about a second ago about the 6-color logo coming back. But there are now some, what do we call these, Federico? Production what are these? Dummies? Production dummy models?
Dummy units, yeah.
Dummy units.
I think so.
So these are, they come out this time every year. They are not functioning iPhones, right? But they are enclosures. And I think they're basically designed for case makers to start working on their products. And so some of these have come out. There's a video in the show notes of an MKBHD video he posted last night of this, of three models. So for lack of better naming, what we will call the 11, the 11R, and the 11 Max. And we've seen these renders before, where they're the 11s have 3 cameras. The R has 2, but the camera bump is the same on both. It kind of looks like an Apple Watch is slowly rising out of the surface of the back of the phone. What do you think about this look, Federico? And what do you think about a third camera, what you would want out of that?
I love the idea of a third camera, right? I think the more, especially because I was sort of not yeah, maybe bored with the 10s and with the, we've talked about the pictures that come out from the 10s camera by default. So I'm all in with the idea of let's bring in a third camera and see what we can do. So that sounds fun, especially if it's going to be an ultra wide camera. I watched the MKBHD video and he speculates how you may end up, shooting like ultra wide 4K video, which sounds incredible on a phone.
Yeah.
So I'm all into that, right? But this design, I feel like we need to talk about it because it's not good. I mean, if this is, of course, we don't know if, we're going to get the person says, oh, you guys are all talking about, this is all rumor. Okay, sure. So to that guy, we respond that we are aware of the fact that we are talking about rumors at this point, although they proved to be quite accurate in the past.
Yeah, very much so.
At this stage, I don't like it. I think it is there's multiple problems going on here for me. So let's just dispense with the mock-ups that we saw until a few weeks ago. The ones where there was a huge camera bump, the huge camera square, whatever you want to call it, tile. I've seen some people call it a camera tile, which I guess it makes sense. But the ones with all the trypophobia going on with the holes, that was terrible. That was a terrible look. I couldn't even bring myself to look at those mock-ups because I very much suffer, like I think everybody else on Earth, I suffer from that, the fear of holes. Do not Google it, trust me.
So what you're referring to is there are kind of two versions of this. One,
the older version
right,
that used to float around until a few weeks ago. That was terrible.
Right. So in that one, the island that the cameras are on, right now, like on the iPhone 10 and higher, the cameras are sunk into black glass. And so unless you are under direct light, you can't really see where the lenses start and the black area begins. The earlier version of this, that raised section, instead of being black, was the body color of the iPhone. So instead of a camera bump, it's all black and there's lenses kind of embedded in it. It was a camera bump in silver or gold or whatever, and the lenses very noticeably kind of floating in the middle of it. And it's not good. I agree with you. Not a good move. And now the rumors seem to point to, okay, it's the same sort of construction of camera bump that we've had where it's raised, there's a lip around it, and it's all black. The surface is all black glass, and the lenses and the flash and everything are sort of embedded into that. And it kind of hides the details, and it avoids the horrific problem that you described.
I agree, though, with MKBHD that the new version of these dummy units also does not look great, in that the camera bump is huge and it really doesn't look nice because it's not centered. He compared this camera bump to the one in the Huawei Mate 20 Pro, I want to say. One of those anyway. And that looked a lot more balanced to me because in the Huawei phone, it was smaller and centered. And I think my greatest issue with these mock-ups is the imbalance of this huge camera bump that's tucked all the way into the upper left corner of the phone. It just looks imbalanced to me from a visual standpoint, to the point where phones always had a camera bump in the upper left corner, but when it was small, when it used to be a small bump, it didn't bother me visually. It's gotten bigger and bigger progressively over the years as Apple has added the second camera and made the whole thing, the whole bump bigger.
Yeah.
But there was still like a fine line between the bump is bigger, but it doesn't look visually imbalanced. And now when you have a square, it looks like half of the phone is one thing and the other half is another device completely. And so having it be in the upper left corner really does it for me. I don't like it. And I look at that, that dummy unit and I look at any other Android phone, including the Huawei one, and I'm like, yeah, this looks so much nicer. It looks so much better. If Apple were to go with this design, of course, it's not finalized and all of that. But I look at the Huawei phone that MKBHD had in the video, and that iPhone 11 dummy unit, and the iPhone 11 looks terrible to me. And then you add in things like it's sort of a boring design because, yeah, we get it. It's the same iPhone 10 look with the notch and all of that. Not a huge issue for me. But then again, I look at other, I discovered, this is a quick aside, I discovered that in the mall, that's 5 minutes away from me, they replaced one of the shops inside the mall with the Xiaomi store. And the Xiaomi store is basically, it looks like a weird, it looks like a bizarro Apple store that in addition to phones also sells toothbrushes and thermostats and stuff like that. And I was in the store because I'm actually intrigued by some of the smart home devices stuff that Xiaomi is doing, because I can sort of hook it up to HomeKit and sort of make it act as a bridge for Zigbee, which is another smart home automation protocol. But that's a different topic. And I was in a Xiaomi store and I saw the Mi Note or the Redmi phone, whatever. It looks awesome. It looks futuristic. It looks new, and it looks like the iPhone 10 looked to me 2 years ago. And so I get why some people are saying, Apple is still doing the notch and Face ID is better than anything else. But you look at these Android phones and they're all screen and you literally do not see the notch and you have the hole punch display. I like that look myself. So the combination of that and with this huge camera bump that's not in the center of the unit, leads me to say, if it's gonna look like this, not the best design, Apple. Actually, one of the worst that you've done in 12 years of iPhone. So we'll see what they do. But if it does look like this, I can already imagine, even though they're obviously not true, I can already imagine the hot takes of Johnny Ive is gone. This is what Apple makes now. Even though technically this is a Johnny Ive phone, people are gonna say that, because that's how people think. So I don't look forward to that. I really hope that Apple has some big surprise up its sleeve, even though at this point, it's August basically, and we're going to have an iPhone event in less than 2 months. It's very possible. Ugh. The design is pretty much locked in. The design was locked in months and months and months ago.
Yeah.
And if these dummy units are circulating now, it means that the design is done and accessory makers have the, all the renders and the CADs to start making cases and whatnot. So it's probably going to look like that. And I don't know, it's not nice to me.
I agree with all of what you said. I think it's awkward. I think it looks extremely unbalanced with all of that to one side. I think being centered maybe would look nicer, but the thing that kind of kills me about this is, and you touched on it, is that the rest of the phone's also just kind of the same. MKBHD actually took issue with something in his video where he said, Apple does a design for the 6 year and then the S year and they change it. That used to be true, but it's not anymore. The 6, 6S, 7, and 8 are all effectively the same design. The 8 swapped out glass for the aluminum back, but even the 10 is a descendant of the 6, right? It's got the rounded edges, and they've changed it over time, but the 10S looks way more like the 6 than the 6 did the 4. They have kind of been in this place for a long time, and I'd love if they went to something sort of inspired by the iPad Pro or the MacBook Pro, like flat edges again. Yes, that's going back to the 4 or 5 sort of generation. There's only so many things you can do with these phones, right? There's only so many things you can do. I understand that. But we've kind of been in this slippery bar of soap territory for a really long time, and now they've bolted this abomination to the back of it. So, but I will say this too. As you know, guys, and as our listeners know, I, for a long time, was a person who did not use a case on their iPhone. And after smashing several phones in quick succession, I've been using the Apple leather case now basically all the time on my 10S. And it does make the whole issue go away a little bit. There's a bump, but look, I got my phone right here. The Apple leather case is as thick, or even actually a little bit thicker, than the camera bump. And if you have the black leather case, which is the one I use, or a dark color, it's all going to kind of blend together anyway. So it's really startling when someone's just carrying a phone without a case. But the case I think Apple relies on the cases to forgive some of this stuff. And like to a degree, it works, right? Like the camera bump on my 10S doesn't bother me when it's in the case. But if I'm carrying it out of the case, I definitely notice it more. And I think that will continue to be true, maybe even more true now that this camera bump is basically the size of a small planet.
I think it's more of a discussion on principle, right?
Yeah.
Like when you look at the design in isolation, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look. It looks like something has been bolted onto the back of the phone, and that was it. It's inelegant. That's, I guess, the word that I would use. And it's not, if we were to go all Johnny Ive on it, I would say that it feels like there's a disconnection in the purity of the object itself, in that you have the main object, which is the phone, and then you have this extra sort of this extraneous component that was added to it, so almost like it was attached to it as an afterthought. That's what it looks like to me. Again, I really hope that it changes somehow by the final release, but I losing hope, day after day.
Yep. Myke, do you think this looks good?
Upsetting.
This episode Connected is also brought to you by Moo. Moo is an online print and design company specializing in customizable business cards, postcards, stickers, and more for your business. Moo is having a semi-annual sale right now. It's live over on moo.com/relay from July 17th, that's today, through July 23rd, that's in the future. And there's 25% off everything. It excludes shipping and gift cards, but it's the perfect time to reorder or stock up or design something fresh. And Moo rarely has such big sales, so don't miss out. Again, that's moo.com/relay. They have a full suite of products: business cards, postcards, invitations, letterhead, which, by the way, I don't feel like I'm fancy enough for letterhead, but maybe I could change that about myself. Like if I sent you a letter with like letterhead with my name on it looking fancy, you would take it seriously. Stickers, notebooks, flyers. You can seamlessly promote yourself or your brand with Moo products, and you can count on their quality. I've got a bunch of Moo business cards here, and they're just spectacular. And they have all sorts of these special finishes: gold foil, a new silver foil, which looks awesome, raised spot gloss, letterpress, and all of these little touches can help make you stand out. And if you're maybe not a designer or you don't want to get into that, Moo recently rolled out new templates for business cards, which are inspired by some of their most creative customers. Like I said, I've used Moo business cards for years and years. Mine are on really heavy cardstock, and every time I hand a business card to somebody, they remark on how nice it is. And maybe that'll help me stick in their brain a little bit. That's not a bad thing. Once again, that's moo.com/relay. You can head over there and save 25%. Moo.com/relay. Our thanks to Moo for their support of Connected and all of Relay FM. All right, Federico. Apple is rumored to be getting into the podcast content business. There's an article over on Bloomberg saying that Apple is looking at this to go against rivals such as Spotify, which of course bought Gimlet Media and a bunch of other podcast content companies and content creators over the last few months. Apple has the largest podcast player in the world. It is the most popular podcast client, and hats off to them for that. It's been a huge success for them, but they've been very hands-off in this particular arena. You couple that with the fact that Apple is increasingly a content company, right? There's Apple TV Plus coming. They're working with all these directors and famous people. So you can kind of see maybe they'd want to put these two things together. Spotify stock fell 1% on the news, which, is probably understandable. And I'm curious, Federico, what do you think about this? There's a lot of ways we could talk about this, but what do you think about Apple getting into this business that others are already playing with?
I wonder if exclusives for podcasts can fare better than what exclusives for music did. I'm thinking about, Apple, both Apple and Spotify, they've tried to entice people to subscribe by having some kind of exclusive content. Spotify at one point had the Spotify sessions going on, and Apple was doing, I think they used to do some iTunes extras as well, or timed exclusives, at least on Apple Music. And I don't think, for the kind of scale that a music streaming service has and the kind of demand that there is for music, I don't feel like an exclusivity necessarily plays into adding subscribers. In that, I feel like whenever I see an exclusive album, Tidal would be a great example. There's only frustration around it, and there's, people are upset because they are unable to listen via the service that they're paying for. That creates a lot of friction for the artists. It creates a lot of frustration among users, and it's sort of why we've seen both companies sort of move away from that type of deal, doing the exclusives, because it didn't benefit the bottom line of adding subscribers after all. And so I have to wonder if podcasting, which has a smaller scale, smaller audience, doesn't have the kind of expectation, Beyonce drops a new album and the album is all available on Tidal. People get upset. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole discussion of here's where, and I've seen these articles, like here's where you can listen to the new Beyonce album for free, or here's how you can pirate the new Beyonce album, here's how you can listen on YouTube.
Right.
If Ira Glass drops a new podcast on Apple Podcasts and it's an exclusive, I don't think we would see that kind of backlash from people. You wouldn't see the articles like, here's how you can listen to the new Ira Glass podcast for free. Like, people, I feel like there's the smaller scale and the smaller audience wouldn't create that kind of anticipation. And so you would be in a situation where, and I'm speculating here, you would be in a situation where maybe 10,000 people or 20,000 people or 50,000 people just hit the subscribe button and sign up, and they're listening to an exclusive podcast now. So I could see why this approach could work for podcasting. On the other hand, as a podcaster myself, I'm not in love with the idea of, everybody's doing its own custom thing now. So why not do it for Apple Podcasts as well? We have all these proprietary and lockdown podcast platforms, and I'm very much, if you know me, you know that I'm very much against the idea of locking down podcasts into silos. Yeah. Just like I'm very much against the idea of, folks who want to have a blog, and instead of, setting up a blog with their own domain name, they use Medium or things like that. So I'm very much against locking the platform, locking an open medium to a closed platform. Again, though, everybody's doing it. Right? Everybody's doing it these days, and everybody is searching for the YouTube of podcasting, or the Netflix of podcasting, call it whatever you want to call it. And there's an argument to be made for Apple to, they have the biggest and the strongest platform, and they have the built-in app on hundreds of millions of devices. Anybody who doesn't have a vested interest in the freedom of podcasting, in the free nature of the RSS spec behind podcasting, would say, why are you not doing this yet? Mm-hmm. I can see the arguments on both sides. I'm really fascinated by the idea that exclusives could work better for podcasts than they did for music. I feel like there's a discussion there about podcasts don't have, even though there are super popular podcasts, I don't feel like there are podcasters that can move the kind of audience that Kanye West or Beyonce or, Shawn Mendes, for example, can move. And so those big artists cannot afford to do exclusives anymore, and that is why they're making money in a bunch of other ways. But maybe podcasters can. Maybe podcasters would not run into those kinds of problems.
It does feel like if anyone can do this successfully, it's Spotify and Apple. And Apple's market share, at least of the player, is way, way bigger than Spotify's. I mean, and the Apple Podcast app is the app in this world. Even amongst shows like ours, where a lot of people use third-party clients, the Apple Podcast client is extremely popular. And if you look into sort of podcasting on the whole and other types of shows outside of tech, it's the vast majority. So it does feel like if anyone could have the number of people, like the number of users to make it even possible, it's Apple, right? Like that's something where something like Luminary, like they just don't have any users, and they're not going to be able to build a business to make all this work without some sort of critical mass of listeners. And Apple has that, right? Because their player is so big. I do agree with you. I am firmly in the camp that podcasting should be open, to the point where I actually don't consider like platform specific content. Those aren't podcasts, right? Like it's audio content. You know, podcasting is something that is open and you can listen anywhere you want because it's based on the RSS spec. This in my mind is slightly different. The content is obviously very similar, but one thing that makes podcasts special is that the ecosystem around it is so flexible. And so I agree with you on all of that. I do find it interesting that they are looking into this. Apple TV Plus is going to be coming this fall, right? Apple Arcade is coming this fall. Apple News is already here, but that's doing its thing, I guess. Apple is continuing to like push into this world where they have multiple content offerings, and we still assume or still hope that there's going to be some sort of grouping of those things, right? We don't have to pay for them all separately. Who knows? But it feels like this is just in line with that, right? This feels like a very natural extension to me of everything else they're doing. And I could even see Apple leveraging podcast in ways to benefit their other content areas and not necessarily putting it behind a paywall. So like, I for instance, a show that I really love is Better Call Saul. It's kind of a before the time of Breaking Bad. And there's an excellent podcast with the producers, the writers, the actors, and it's out every week. And so that's a podcast I've listened to for 4 years now, however long the TV show's been on, because it goes behind the scenes and talks about the process. And that sort of content Apple could do with Apple TV Plus or even Apple Arcade, talking to the creators behind this content. And they could just put that in the podcast directory, right? And I'd like, if Apple's going to do this, they're going to have a paywall with audio content, like that, whatever, that's fine. But I would hope that they could also see the benefit of having open content, even if it is to benefit their other stuff. I think people will be really interested in that. There are a couple of Apple TV Plus shows I'm really interested in watching. I'd love to hear more about them. So Apple could use their podcast directory and their size for more than just making a few bucks. So it's a very interesting story. There's also some breaking news about Spotify we should squeeze in here. You guys ready? You guys sitting down?
I think I know what it is.
What is it?
They support split view and slide over now on the iPad.
What year did those features come to the iPad, Federico?
Yeah, it was iOS 9. So that would be 2015, which is 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So,
yeah.
Well done, Spotify iOS team.
I look forward to the day in 2021 when they will support drag and drop. So, looking forward to that.
Yeah, Spotify doing stuff. Myke, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Yes.
Yes, but he cannot add it now.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's follow-up.
I think it means that next time we will talk about it because he has thoughts, but those thoughts cannot be shared because of physical reasons today.
So, Myke, will you put this in follow-up for next week? I'm on vacation, so it's up to you.
Yes.
All right. To round out today's episode, we are here to celebrate World Emoji Day. Before we get into this, we've had a lot of tweets about this. Last year, we had Federico guess the names of the emoji. We did that based on Apple's full set of artwork. All Apple has shown at this point is a couple of samples. And so Federico is restraining himself from looking at these things. And we're actually not going to talk about the new emoji today because that would be spoiling him for the future episode. But that's when we'll do it, when Apple unveils the full set. That should be in the fall. Generally, it's with, a point update for iOS. So maybe iOS 13.1 or 13.2 would have these new emojis. So we'll do that then. So it is coming. It's just not today. There are a couple links in the show notes.
I've only seen one.
Okay.
Actually, a couple. I've seen one because I just I saw the article on Mac Stories, and we'll talk about
I'm not familiar with that.
and we'll talk about it this fall when they actually come out. But I saw one that almost looked like a robotic Italian gesture. There's like a the Italian hand with like the typical Italian gesture, like in Italy, like with the hand closed, and the fingers facing upwards. Yeah, there's a robot making that gesture. So I think that will be called Italian robot or Italian robot arm.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding that it's that a real breakthrough in emoji design. Italians and robots together finally at last. There's others that I just very quickly glanced over, and I will I have a couple of months to think about them.
Yeah.
I haven't read any of the image captions or explanations or details. I have blocked Jeremy Burge from my contacts. No, I actually haven't. No, I haven't blocked Jeremy.
Actually, I spoke to Jeremy the other night. We knew this was coming. I said, "Hey, are they going to show the whole set?" He said, "No. They just showed that they're just going to do like what they normally do. Showing he believed they would show a preview, which is what they've done. So we're just going to park all that until the fall. So September, October, whenever that happens. But it is World Emoji Day, and there's a lot of brands are doing things like literally as we're talking. The university that I went to has a tweet about World Emoji Day, which is very troubling. But Adobe went out and they have performed this massive study, I guess is what you would call it, looking at trends of emoji. And I found this really interesting. So I thought, Federico, you and I could talk through it and we'll ask Myke some questions.
Okay.
So this is looking at users of emoji, looking at the top 3 favorite emojis. And I got to say, I'm not sure there's many surprises in here. So one is like the laughing guy with tears coming out. You're laughing so hard you're crying. Number 2 is the red heart. And number 3 is the little blowing a heart kiss. Like a mwah kind of person.
Oh, I like that. Can you do that again?
Mwah, like that.
Oh.
Good. Did that heal you, Myke?
Yeah. No.
I'm not surprised by any of those, I don't think. Myke, are you surprised by any of those?
No.
So we have LOL guy, heart, and kiss.
Yeah. So we're going to keep going here. So a majority, 81% of emoji users believe that people who use emoji are friendly and more approachable, which there's some bias in that, right? Because everyone views themselves as friendly and approachable. Do you think that that's true? Do you think that people who use emoji, say in text messages or in tweets, do they feel nicer to you, Myke?
Yes.
What about you, Federico?
I've met some real assholes who use emojis. Sorry, Steven, you'll have to beep this one.
Yeah, fixed. But look, let's just talk about Casey less for a second. Casey uses more emoji than any grown man I've ever met. And I think most people would say Casey's a pretty nice guy. So this is an example, but
that's debatable though. Still, I think generally speaking, I could see why people think that other people who use these little characters, these little figurines, they have a fun edge to them, maybe, like, hey, I can be fun, I can use emoji, I can have colors in my text, whereas some of my friends, for example, super nice people, right? But I have a friend in particular who uses punctuation whenever he texts me. It's like, hello, period. How are you? Like, he's a super fun guy, but he has this punctuation thing going on. I don't know why. He sounds constantly upset even though it's not. And that's because we come to see proper punctuation as a sort of as a looking down upon someone. I don't know, but it just feels he would never use emoji, but he's a fun person in real life. So I feel like this is a fun type of study that somebody should do.
My dad does that, but for some reason on his iPhone, he's just learned to type. And so he like types a sentence and then a space and then the punctuation. So it's like happy birthday space exclamation point.
No,
it's very upsetting.
No.
When asked about emoji's greatest benefits, and Federico, this is going to be for you, 94% of people said that it makes communicating across language barriers easier, and 90% said that it's a way to instantly share thoughts and ideas. So, Federico, you live in a world with more than one language. Does emoji help you cut through that?
Not when it's a pizza emoji.
Oh,
yeah, because once again, the pizza emoji is wrong. It's not.
We don't need to.
It's not
that.
pizza. There's an episode of Connected that you can listen to for an explanation about this very problem that is sadly not fixed in iOS 13. But I feel like I cannot think of any examples of an emoji that you guys sent me that didn't make sense to me, or that it was culturally different, or like that I just didn't understand. Like I think there's some truth to the fact that emojis are sort of like a universal language. I'm sure there are cases of certain characters or objects meaning something profoundly different in another country or in another language. But I feel like from Western civilization type point of view, Italy and the US are close enough that, I get what the eggplant emoji means. Obviously, you want to cook some pasta, and so therefore you need the eggplants. I think it would be interesting to compare common emoji uses between, I don't know, Italy and India, for example, or, I don't know, Greece and Brazil. I bet that you would see some fascinating differences there. So, I don't know, it's a very fascinating topic from the point of view of, what it means on a cultural level to share certain emotions or objects or characters via emoji. Somebody should write a paper about this.
The second part of that's interesting to me, that you could instantly share a thought or idea, because I think actually a lot of emoji are clear, but there are definitely certain examples that are very open to interpretation. And then you add in the fact that you may be texting somebody not on the same platform as you are. So this has gotten better over the years, but there are a couple of characters that on iOS and Android are rendered differently enough where like it could be confusing. So I don't know if I'm in that 90% there. Lots of times it does work, like a thumbs up or, the kissy heart guy or something like that's like it's a point across. But I do think that in certain circumstances, emoji actually add confusion to things. So, maybe I'm just showing my age a little bit. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about emails and brands. Over half, 58% of emoji users are more likely to open an email from a brand that has an emoji in the subject line. Myke, should I include emojis in the subject line of the Relay FM membership newsletter now?
Yes.
All right.
Can I decide the emoji?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Good. Good. Very good. The oracle has spoken.
65% of emoji users say they are more comfortable expressing their emotions through emoji than a phone call. I'm going to keep reading. This is especially true for Gen Z. 83% of those people say that's true of them. Of course, just to clarify, Gen Z is people born between 1997 and 2015. Maybe this is me being old, but I can see this, right? I can see the same way that text is easier than like calling somebody if you need to share something. But again, like maybe this in my mind plays into the emoji can be misread and confusing at times. I don't know, Federico. Like what? Like if I ask you this question, Federico, are you more comfortable expressing your emotions through emoji than a phone call?
Ooh, phone calls?
That's what it says.
Really? Ooh. No. See, and I'm not joking here. I have blocked people in my address book because they call me on the phone too early in the morning. I very much despise talking on the phone.
Okay.
Even though I understand that in some cases it is much faster than coordinating something over text message.
Totally.
So I use phone calls, but I always make sure that I can call somebody beforehand. I don't drop in on somebody and just call them on the phone and be like, hey, let's talk on the phone. No, I don't do that. So I feel like the phone call is always agreed upon beforehand. I very much prefer to use text or emoji or whatever. What is it, to share emotions? Was that the question?
Yes. Yeah. Are you more comfortable sharing emotion with emoji or via phone call?
I don't know. Am I supposed to like call my girlfriend and on the phone and say love you, good night, instead of sending like a heart emoji when I'm away? Like, yeah, we FaceTime. So like, I don't understand what sharing emotions via emoji involves.
You're too old. We finally found something you're too old for.
I guess I'm too old for that. Myke, do you find yourself expressing emotions via emoji?
Yeah.
Man, I really love this approach, Steven, where we can just summon,
it's like a magic 8-ball.
It's like thus spoke Zarathustra, the Nietzsche thus spoke Zarathustra. No, nobody study philosophy here.
No.
Anyway, moving on. That's just a reference for two people out there. What else do we have about emoji?
So to wrap this up, 78% of emoji users agree that emoji should continue to strive for making themselves more inclusive, bringing more people in. 73% of people wish they had more emoji customization options to better reflect their personal appearance and identity. This has been something that's been going on the last several rounds of new emoji, right? You can change hair color and skin tone. In the future, there's even more options for this sort of thing. And I think that's awesome because if you're going to send an emoji to share an emotion, for example, that emoji should look like you. You should feel like you identify with it, and the receiver identifies it with you. And so I think there's absolutely always more work to do here. And so I'm part of the 78% here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A little more emoji news. The most popular of the new emoji that came out last year is the smiling face with hearts. This is the smiling face with the 3 little hearts sort of in orbit around the face. Myke, is that an emoji that you like?
Love.
Just to round out the top list, there's that one. There's pleading face, which I don't think I've ever actually used. There's woozy face, which is very upsetting looking. Overheated, where the face is red and the tongue is sticking out like a sweat bead. I find that one kind of funny. Partying face. And then freezing face. Those sort of round out the top 6. But by far, smiling face with hearts took this away. This is based on page views on the Emojipedia website over the last year. I think it's a great emoji. I think it's warm. It makes me feel fuzzy inside. So I think this is a well-deserved award.
Myke uses it a lot, I think.
Yeah.
I've seen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, nice. This is very nice. Very interesting data points here.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wonder, Apple should participate in this kind of stuff because they probably can see, with the whole differential privacy thing that they have on iOS. I bet they have some interesting data to share. But still, it's fun to have this kind of data from Emojipedia and Adobe. So very nice, very nice.
Cool. So we're going to round this out a little bit by talking about how emoji are selected. It is a complicated process through the Unicode committee. Our friend Mark over at Welcome to Macintosh went through this process a while back and actually submitted an emoji that got like in the standard. So the yoga emoji, that was Mark's suggestion, which is really cool. He's the only person I know who has had an emoji put in Unicode because of his work. If you didn't listen,
Jeremy.
well, Jeremy invented emoji, so that doesn't count.
Yeah.
That's 2 words, Myke.
Damn.
So anyways, Unicode, there's this story going around. Unicode is making it easier to suggest new emoji. It is still very much a very complicated process. They basically sort of like re-skinned the website a little bit. So there's a lot of work. You submit it, it goes to committee, people vote on it. Jeremy's part of that committee. And it's quite the process. Definitely go check out Welcome to Macintosh. If you didn't listen to that, like, you need to go put that in your podcast client, because it was so fascinating to hear the process as someone went through it. It's a great idea for a show. So I think that about does it. Federico and half of Myke. It's been a kind of a nutty week with some oddball stuff, but we made our way through it. Myke, do you think the show is time to? You think it's time to wrap up the show?
Yes.
If you want to find links to stuff we spoke about, you can find them in your podcast app of choice, but they're also on our website, relay.fm/connected/252. While you're there, you can send us an email with feedback or follow-up, or you can do that on Twitter. You can find Myke there as IMYKE, and Myke is the host of a bunch of shows over on Relay FM. You can find Federico on Twitter at Viticci, Viticci, and he's the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. You can follow me on Twitter as ISMH and find my writing at 512pixels.net. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, ExpressVPN, Hover, and Moo. And until next time, gentlemen, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Adios.